Hi, I'm Jonathan Kociuba, co-creator of the Flytrap.
And I'm Eddie Mumford, the writer of the Flytrap.
And you're listening to True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Jonathan Kociuba and Eddie Mumford about The Flytrap. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Jonathan is based in Toronto as an illustrator known for his space pirate character and collaborations with the Urban Ninja Squadron of street artists. He frequently illustrates album covers and gig posters for bands, and is a lead singer for the indie rock bands Summer and Youth. His published efforts include Toronto Comics' Osgood is Gold, Paperhead, and Death Blazers. Also based in Toronto, Eddie is a writer of short stories, novels, essays, and now comic books. He received an honors degree in literature in April 2011, along with an award for Best Essay in 2012 for The Humor and Horror of Cannibalism in Neronian Literature. Eddie and Jonathan formed Grotesk Comics, and their first venture is the series The Flytrap. The Flytrap is an anthology series where the human race goes extinct, and the next step in evolution takes over. The story goes like this. After a comet hits the Earth and a prehistoric fungus in our DNA wakes up, transforming the survivors into vicious, devouring insects. But is survival worth the price of admission? And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Jonathan Kociuba and Eddie Mumford about The Flytrap.
So Jonathan Kociuba and Eddie Mumford, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John.
I appreciate your time. Before we get started, though, with the questions, I want to ask you, what's on your bedside reading table? What are you reading today? And maybe I'll ask Jonathan to go first.
Well, I have it's more of a to-read pile, basically, that's kind of accumulated. So the more recent stuff I had was Do a Powerbomb. I just recently bought that from Dale Warren Johnson's latest thing. And I'm currently trying to finish off God's Head, H.A. Anderson's book, so I can get ready for his second volume.
Very good. And how about you, Eddie? What's on your bedside reading table?
My friend just lent me Alison Bechdel's Fun Home, so I just started that. And I'm about halfway through V for Vendetta because it's a classic, and I actually have never gotten around to reading it before.
Oh, yeah, good. Well, we won't spoil the ending, but so with that in mind, I want to ask you both, who or what inspires you to create today? And maybe, Eddie, I'll ask you to go first this time.
Oh, sure. I mean, I got a literature degree a few years ago, and so I got to read a lot of amazing books in my time. And there's just so many inspirational people. To name off a few, I mean, Kurt Vonnegut's always been big for me. Like Lovecraft, especially for the horror stuff, Poe. Peter Carey's great, Alice Munro, Toni Morrison. So I like to read really complicated and usually scary and magical novels, and then that bleeds into all my work.
Sounds good. How about you, Jonathan? Who or what inspires you to create?
Well, currently right now, the one artist, again, like just with Do a Powerbomb, Dale Warren Johnson is a great artist that, like, whenever I see his work, is just like, it's really inspiring to see that energy and stuff and the fun factor towards art, which I really appreciate. I mean, my OG influence of all time that taught me how to draw was Mr. Dressup.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, when I was like 4 years old, I would have that, the half JK class, and it would my whole hour after would be it would be Mr. Dressup, and it would be the Spider-Man's classic reruns. Yeah,
can't go wrong there.
Yeah, can't go wrong there.
I met up with you gentlemen at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, and there you were promoting your new book, The Flytrap. So I want to get into that title, talk a wee bit more about it. Maybe if you could talk about the story and what inspired you to create it. Maybe I'll ask Eddie to go first.
Sure. Well, that's actually a two-parter. So the creation of it initially was Jonathan. He came to me with, I think it was about 12 or 13 pages that were roughly finished, but had no dialogue. There were no words written down. And he came to me and he said, I think I have something here, but I'm not sure what it is. And he wanted me to take a look at it. So I sat on it for a little while, just, ruminating, trying to figure out, sending little probability bombs into the future, trying to figure out where the story could go. And then, I don't know, it started to hook itself, and existential dread was definitely the vein we wanted to go in. And I think that's definitely the story that we're building. The whole idea of the very existence of being alive being a horrible thing for a number of reasons, but we can get into that.
Yeah, I have talked to several creators over the last 2 years, and with this pandemic, some, not all, but some have translated this experience we're going through into a horror comic book. Just the nature of what we're going through as a means of explaining it, I guess. Jonathan, did you draw upon anything specifically when you started out this book?
I think for me personally, it was there's a lot of personal frustrations, and like there are certain things that didn't happen that I thought were going to happen, and I wanted to be more. I just wanted to be proactive and kind of like just kind of being sharpened to do comic pages and stuff. And I just had this kind of like this creative fever dream on New Year's of just like I was just drawing a page a day, and I was just kind of doing something. But then I kind of stopped myself as well because I know that I've had a like in my past comic books. I really lacked a lot in story structure and just something that can be solidly comprehensible, something someone can comprehend. And I felt like, and I remember with Eddie, I showed him one of my books before, and he gave me these amazing critiques that I didn't get to utilize, but I knew that like if I wanted to do this thing right, I needed his help a lot and stuff. And Eddie's in a way too was kind of like teaching me actually like the kind of like of story writing, just like the essence of story writing and stuff, and in being creative in that way.
That's very interesting because that leads to my next question about your collaboration process as a writer and artist. Can you walk me through how you did it, how it came from initial concept to finished product?
Sure.
You want to go first, Eddie?
I can start on that. We have slowly been changing our process as we go through, right? We just finished the third book. So it's been a little bit different each time, and we're learning every time. But it seems like the magic happens when actually we usually start with a meeting, and we kind of talk about where we think the issue might go thematically, plot-wise. And then I go back and I do my writing. What I do is I create little squares, and then I fill each square represents a page. And then I fill up each square with Post-it notes for all the actions and dialogue that should take place on that page. And then when I think I've got the right number of pages to workshop with Jonathan, we have a meeting, and then we discuss each page. And then Jonathan asks questions. He then has ideas that might be better than mine, and then we write those in. Then I do the handoff. So after we've workshopped the page together, I give him all the notes, and then he works on sketches, and then we look at them together. I feel like that's been the best one so far. What do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think so too. Like, it's funny because I think I guess with me and Eddie, I think we're also at the same time we're also learning together, like to make a comic book. Because like even for me, I'm still kind of in that very amateur stage. So like it's this thing we're both kind of learning, because I guess there's no real like right way to make a comic book, right? And so I think you have to kind of and I've had a similar experience with recording and music as well, where it's like recording music, there's different ways of like your comfort factor and what can get the best ideas out of yourselves and stuff. And I find out with this process, it kind of goes. It's this thing where what I do like about it a lot, and what's very exciting about it is that we both kind of have these things we both want to get out in the book from ourselves and stuff, and we almost kind of challenge each other in a certain way. Where it's like Eddie will inspire me by like a scene that he wants to do, and then I'll be like, all right, well I'll do that, and I'll raise you a gruesome, pus-filled monster thing, and stuff like that, and then he'll try to like take that and he'll cut it up and then he'll send it back to me again. So it's a very fun. There's a really fun process to it. So there's a very organic process to this whole thing.
Oh, very good. Now, Jonathan, correct me. You are a digital artist by nature or traditional?
Oh, yeah. I'm fully digital now. I converted 2 years ago.
Okay, and how did that help the process at all in terms of changes you needed on the fly?
Oh, tremendously. I mean, basically switching to like the iPad has really has just changed just how fast I can get an idea out there in my head. It's like having your art table like access anywhere. I basically was slowly converting to digital by like I used to have a big art table, and then that became impractical because I have kids and I have like responsibilities and stuff. And so I converted from an art table to a sketchboard, which I'd bring in the trunk of my car, and so I'd pull out this sketchboard and draw stuff. And then it started getting smaller and smaller. And then I had a heart-to-heart with another fellow artist of mine, Tyrone McCarthy, and he was saying, have you ever considered using the iPad Pro? I mean, like, you're basically doing that right now. Like
blasphemy.
Yeah, and I see the work that people do and stuff like that, and at first I was like, well, I don't want, what if I have originals and stuff? And then the reality also is no one buys my originals, so that kind of solved it. A thing where like you have to kind of get outside of yourself, and I gotta say this too, having the iPad Pro really changed, like, I hate to say this, but it changed my life a lot. Like basically now in situations where, like, for instance, if I have to go to the mall for something, just say for instance I have to drive people to the mall, and I really don't need anything in the mall, I can like finish a page while waiting for the people to shop in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've done things like that. I've come early to work and I've finished panels just like waiting for work to start. And I'm able to work while like I'm energetic when I'm still like I'm at my peak of the day and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that from other artists. It's very beneficial.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When he sends me these images, like in the middle of the day, during the working day, he's churning out these visions and he'll send them to me. And it's so inspiring that now what I do is I move the story onto Google Docs, that if I'm ever on the subway and traveling from place to place, I can be working on the script, be working on the story. So Jonathan's been very inspirational as a working partner.
Great. Good to hear. Good to hear. Now, you've been publishing the Flytrap series under your own banner called Grotesk Comics. And I wanted to ask you why you created that banner and how's it going for you?
Well, I actually studied the grotesque pretty intensely in school, and I ended up writing about it an awful lot because I think it's one of the most interesting elements of satire. It's the one that people connect to whether they want to or not. Because when you see something happen to a body, you connect to it, right? Because we all have bodies. So when you see someone get their arm chainsawed off, you have quite a visceral reaction, even though nothing is technically happening to you. And that's all part of the kind of magic of the grotesque. I don't know. I always was primed to use that word, and I sent that over to Jonathan. No, actually, I sent you I was being all pretentious, and I translated it to Latin. I can't even remember what it was, and I sent you that word, and then he said, "What does that mean?" And then I think it was you, Jonathan, who came up with spelling grotesque like the German spelling, right?
Yeah, because it's a lot more simpler. But then I doubled down on pretentiousness, and I tried to basically. Well, I'm glad you stopped me here, but I was like, what if not only do we spell the German way, what if we take out all the vowels and make it like
turn it into a logo?
It's a logo, and it's like no. Let's just stick with that one.
Yeah. Now, did you feel that this was a necessity in order to get your book out because you felt that you had to create your own publishing house?
Not really. Well, I can't speak for Jonathan, but for me, it was almost a license or an understanding that, the Flytrap is a book that we're working on, but we may work on other books. And if we do work on other books, it'll be under this banner. So what Grotesk Comics means is that Jonathan and I are working together. A grotesque comic book is I write, Jonathan illustrates. That's what that means.
Very good. Yeah. Very good.
But sorry, it does have. I learned though it did have certain benefits, like later on that I never realized. Where people are like, "Oh, how did you get on Grotesk Comics?" I'm like, "That's us."
So carry some weight then, I guess, is the other practical matter. Instead of just putting on a book, you actually have as I said, a publishing house, and that does carry some weight when you're promoting your book and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, maybe in the future, if we're incredibly successful, knock on wood, we can also be publishing other people's works that, fall nicely into our house.
Very good. Yeah. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I met up with you gentlemen at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. You were promoting your books. I'm wondering will you be attending any other conventions or festivals this year to continue the promotion?
We have nothing really planned for the time being. I think Fan Expo, I would want to be in the sense of I think we'd be on the waiting list and stuff like that, but I think for the future, I think we're considering possibly Frightmare in the Falls and like maybe instead of doing a comic convention, do a horror convention and see how that's like.
Because that's really where your audience is for this particular series, I presume.
Absolutely. We kind of got into a knack of that at whenever we table. Our first question to anyone walking by is, do you like sci-fi horror? Do you like sci-fi horror? Do you like sci-fi horror? Because if the answer is no, we really don't want to waste their time.
Yeah.
I think it's really come into its own. I remember dating myself back to the Alien movie, where it's sort of like, and that goes even back to the 50s when we had those other horror movies with the aliens and prehistoric monsters and that sort of thing. So I think it's been in the zeitgeist for many, many years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For sure. And it's transformed so much, right? Because, I mean, like what you just referenced, maybe like sci-fi movie from the 50s, like Them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got a bunch of giant ants terrorizing a town, but the ants represent the fear of nuclear holocaust as well as communism. The monsters stay the same, but what they represent changes throughout time, right?
Right, exactly.
I think you were implying earlier that the pandemic has had a huge effect on everyone's stories right now. And I think if you were to read issue 3, it would be hard to not see some parallels, because we write about a pandemic. There's a few little hints and nods to the pandemic that we're going through right now. But I think what's cool about our book is that the real horror is beyond that. A comet hitting the Earth, our species going extinct, this fungal infection. These are actually not the most horrific things about the story. It's much more horrific to realize why they are alive to begin with, but that's coming in a later issue.
Right. Speaking of that, you've got issue 3 that is out now. Do you have any other projects that you can talk about now that's coming up down the road?
Ooh, we kind of do, but I don't know how much we want to talk about it.
Okay.
No, no, I won't say about that much about that one. But we're still continuing Flytrap 4. I think the other question is going to be, because of the way the paper costs and stuff, we're considering possibly releasing 4 digitally, and then for the time being, possibly we'll see.
Yeah, because I've talked to some other creators about the issue, the real issue about lack of paper and lack of access to it. So I guess these are different ways around it. You still want to get your stories out, yet you're still constrained by this pandemic and the sort of side effects that it's creating for everyone.
Yeah, paper and toner.
Paper and toner, both shortage.
Right, exactly.
It's tough out there.
Well, do you have a website or social media that you recommend where people can find out about your future projects when they are made public? Where should they go?
Oh, for sure. So we've got 2 great spots. I think our Instagram is the most active. So you can find us at Grotesk Comics, and Grotesk is spelled with a K, not a Q-U-E. And then you can also find us at groteskcomics.com. And we usually have our most recent updates and links to our web shop there.
Great. Well, Jonathan, Eddie, those are all the questions I have, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
Maybe what the Flytrap stands for?
Yeah, let's talk about that. What does it stand for? What can you sort of reveal without giving too much of the story away?
Well, I think a lot of people, when they think about their existence, they think of it as a gift from nature. And I think the horror of the Flytrap is that nature is actually a giant hungry mouth that has created them just to eat them.
Okay.
That's all I'll say in speaking in broad strokes.
Thanks to Jonathan and Eddie for the chat. You can discover more about Jonathan on Instagram at j.s.kaye and online at jonathankociuba.com. You can discover more about Eddie on Instagram at Mumford and Spice. And you can discover Grotesk Comics on Instagram at Grotesk Comic. That's GROTESK Comics, and online at groteskcomics.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel and hit the notification button. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.